Hey guys, it's Matt, and I'm going to be talking about European exploration and the rise of European monarchies. First, I'm going to start off with the rise of European monarchies. After the conclusion of the Middle Ages, there was a shift from a feudal system to unification under one monarch. This took place over the course of the late 15th century and the early 16th centuries. Feudal ideas still lingered, but the monarchy began to be favored much more. Due to the Great Schism and the Hundred Years' War, the nobles and clergy began to lose their power. The Great Schism is referring to the period from 1378 to 1417, during which there was two papacies in the Roman Catholic Church, one in Rome and one in Avignon. Also, there was less strength in government assemblies such as the English Parliament, the French Estates General, and the Spanish Cortes. As local townspeople began to favor the king and support the rising ideals, they gained more power and influence from the king. Furthermore, control over national policies on taxation, warfare, and law enforcement went to appointed persons by the monarch and not self-governing bodies. These aspects became national instead of regional, which was a huge step in centralization in every nation. The late 15th century is when monarchs took monumental steps in establishing themselves. They appointed strong executives with national views who were loyal to the state. They even began to establish armies by hiring mercenaries. In terms of taxation, monarchs had several fundraising ideas, although they generally heavily taxed the peasantry, and the nobility managed to avoid heavy taxation. In fact, the monarchs were forced to even borrow from the nobility. This established them as equals to the monarchs themselves. This set the tone for a long war between the monarchs and the nobility. France, Spain, and England in the late 15th century were the prime examples of strong and rising monarchy. Firstly, in France, Charles VII drove the English out and built a strong economy. Also, Charles the Bold was defeated and the Burgundian Empire was dissolved. This gave Louis XI, Charles VII's successor, a large amount of land that he is forced to split with the Habsburgs. Although with his new land and freedom he is able to create firm powers under his own rule. Secondly, in Spain, there was unification when Isabel of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon were married in 1469. This saw over great economic, social, and political benefits. Together they established Christianity as the national religion through the Spanish Inquisition. Here they wanted to establish supreme Christianity and they exiled thousands of Jews from the Spanish lands. The monarch also gained the support of the Hermandad, a powerful league of cities and towns within Spain. This made Ferdinand and Isabella very popular amongst the citizens as they attempted to input more policies into effect. Spain was also very effective in arranged marriages for their children. This eventually results in the reign of Charles I, the first ruler of unified Spain. The Spanish also triumphed in overseas exploration. They promoted persons such as Christopher Columbus, and they were able to gain valuable gold and silver, as well as other resources from their founded lands. This put them in a position of power over their European competitors, as Spain was able to establish an empire in the New World before any other nation had done so. Lastly, there is England. The War of Roses kept England down until Henry VII established the firm Tudor dynasty. Henry was able to make sacrifices for his country, and he married Elizabeth of York so that he could unify the Lancaster and York families, as he was from the Lancaster family. He also succeeded in disciplining the nobility by creating the Court of Star Chamber. This gave him a form of jurisdiction over the nobility. He gained back noble lands and gained a significant amount of money from them as well. On the other hand, the Holy Roman Empire was unlike England, France, and Spain. It was the main example of a country that did not develop a strong centralized monarchy in this period. Germany was divided into 300 smaller kingdoms and became weak. Unification failed because princes were sovereign rulers who refused to collaborate, although reforms started in feudal areas at the turn of the 16th century. Now I will dive into European exploration. From the 1400s to the 1700s, Europe experienced an age of exploration. The Renaissance encouraged curiosity and desire for trade amongst the nations of Europe. You may ask why Europeans wanted to explore. The three reasons can be explained by simply the three G's: God, glory, and gold. Gold meaning money. Firstly, there's gold. Throughout overseas explorations, merchants and traders hoped ultimately to benefit from what had become a profitable business in Europe, the trade of spices and other luxury goods from Asia. Muslims and Italians controlled the trade from east to west, and Europeans wanted to find another way to bypass the Italians and Muslims' control. Secondly, there is glory. Kings who sponsored the voyages of these explorers had the opportunity of becoming more powerful by gaining colonies and new sources of wealth for their home countries. Also, the exploration gave simple European citizens the opportunity to rise from poverty and to make a name for themselves. Lastly, there is God. Europeans began to explore the idea of converting the world into Christianity, and to do this they would have to travel and preach the word of God against the rising Islam religion. Also, missionaries were dedicated to spread Christianity and to convert individuals. Technology played a major role in expansion as well. The Renaissance introduced sailing advancements such as a magnetic compass to aid in sailing directions, astrolabes to direct the ships according to the stars, and this overall resulted in a more accurate system of maps. There was also the construction of new ships that could travel further distances into open water. This such ship was called the caravel, which was used by many of the European nations. Global exploration is something that had never been done before by anyone in the world, until the late 1400s when the Europeans did so. Portugal was the first nation to explore with success, with leaders such as Henry the Navigator and Vasco da Gama. Henry established a school for navigation, and Vasco da Gama founded the first trade route to Asia by going around Africa, and he founded the Cape of Good Hope. Portugal also established colonies in Brazil and the coast of Africa. Spain was watching as Portugal prospered, and they decided to join in. Ferdinand and Isabella were the most supportive monarchs of exploration, and they're well known for supporting Christopher Columbus. Ferdinand Magellan is also a significant explorer, as he sailed the entire world. During their expansion, Spain established valuable colonies in South and North America. Spain also sent explorers known as conquistadors to find gold and silver and to convert people to Christianity in South America. The gold from the New World made Spain the most powerful empire during the early years of exploration. The major conquistadors were Hernan Cortez, who conquered the Aztecs, and Francisco Pizarro, who conquered the Incans. There was an eventual shortage of workers as the need for more supplies increased. Therefore, slaves were brought in to work for the Spanish, as the Spanish continued to want more and more goods. It was because of the overall explorers that the native population was diminished to nearly nothing. This is another side of exploration, the lust for greed and power, and doing anything to get that. Then there are the French. The French were also involved as they established a large colony along the Mississippi River from Canada to New Orleans, as they were led by Samuel de Champlain. Although England wasn't like other nations, England allowed private companies to fund their expeditions. They established themselves on the Atlantic coast of North America by colonists motivated by either religion or wealth. They're also led by the famous sailor James Cook. Finally, there are the Dutch, who established the East India Company. Overall, by the end of the 15th century, Europeans had ventured beyond their normal borders into lands across the Atlantic and beyond Africa. With exploration came the dark side of the Western world. This will eventually lead to increased competition and war for centuries to come. With incoming gold and silver, people became overwhelmed and oblivious. They did not realize that with this came the bombshell that would drop on their economies. The prime example of this is Spain. Although, exploration had its many advantages as well. Essentially, it brought Europe out of the Dark Ages into the modern world, as they explored new lands and interacted with each other more.